From the very first episode of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, one man stood between the team and whatever lurked in the shadows of that cursed property. Known only as the Gatekeeper, he was the wall, the protector, the last line of defense between the living and the unknown. While the world focused on UFO sightings, radiation spikes, and impossible aerial phenomena, there was something far more disturbing happening behind the scenes, something that eventually drove the Gatekeeper to walk away forever. For years, he guarded the ranch with an intensity unlike anything viewers had ever seen. The cold stare, the folded arms, the razor-sharp awareness. He didn't act like a security chief. He acted like a soldier on a battlefield no one else could see. And now we know why. Because what forced him to leave wasn't contract issues, wasn't drama, and wasn't television. It was something darker, something intelligent, something that wasn't just watching the ranch. It was watching him. And according to insiders, it called him by name. Tonight, we uncover the disturbing truth about what really happened during his final nights on the ranch, the horrifying encounters the cameras never aired, and the moment he realized he was being hunted. Before we begin, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what comes next. From the moment cameras first rolled on The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, there was one man viewers couldn't ignore, a figure who rarely smiled, rarely spoke, and never ever let his guard down. The crew called him the Gatekeeper, a title he earned not from publicity or fame, but from years of standing watch over one of the most mysterious and dangerous pieces of land in America. Long before helicopters and film crews arrived, long before the ranch became a global phenomenon, he was already there, patrolling the remote Utah property in silence, studying the land, learning its rhythms, and protecting it from whatever might be lurking beyond the fence line. He wasn't hired to look good for television. He wasn't there for entertainment. He was there because the people who controlled the ranch trusted him more than anyone else. And trust on Skinwalker Ranch is earned the hard way, through fear, through experience, and through encounters that never make it into public reports. The Gatekeeper developed a reputation almost instantly. Viewers could see it in his body language, arms crossed like armor, jaw tight, eyes constantly scanning the horizon. He moved like a man expecting an attack at any second. There was nothing casual about him, no loose chatter, no smiles for the camera, no reassurance for the curious. His silence spoke louder than words ever could. He didn't behave like a security guard. He behaved like a soldier standing between two worlds. Crew members said he had the ability to sense when something was wrong, even before instruments began to malfunction or cameras picked up anomalies. If he stopped walking, everyone else instinctively stopped too. If he looked toward the ridge, others followed his gaze without question. And if he said, "We need to go," nobody argued. What most viewers never knew was that the Gatekeeper was already deeply connected to the ranch long before the world ever saw him on screen. Brandon Fugel, the owner of Skinwalker Ranch, trusted him personally, not because of his tactical skills alone, but because he understood the ranch in a way nobody else did. He paid attention to the invisible pressure changes in the air, the unnatural silence in the trees, and the strange sensation that something unseen was watching from the darkness. Even in the earliest episodes, the signs were there for those paying attention. The way he lingered at the fence line late at night, the way his voice tightened whenever conversations turned toward things the cameras weren't allowed to record, the way his eyes shifted when someone asked about events that happened before the History Channel arrived. It was clear. The Gatekeeper carried a weight that no one else could feel. Like he was guarding a story he wasn't ready to tell. He wasn't just protecting the ranch from trespassers. He was protecting the world from whatever the ranch was trying to release. And behind the calm, controlled exterior, something darker lived, something shaped by experiences he refused to share publicly. The ranch had changed him long before the audience ever met him. It had marked him, and deep down, everyone around him sensed it. The gatekeeper wasn't afraid of the unknown. He was afraid of what he already knew, what he had seen, what he had heard, and what he refused to say on camera. From the very beginning, it was obvious he was carrying secrets, dark ones, heavy ones, and eventually those secrets would be the very thing that drove him to walk away from the only place he ever swore to protect. For months, the gatekeeper worked the ranch with the same intense, controlled discipline he'd always carried. Every night he walked the perimeter like clockwork, scanning every shadow and every tree line. Nothing startled him, nothing broke his focus. He was the unshakable force, until the night that changed everything. It happened late one evening, long after the crew had packed up their equipment and turned in. A strange spike of interference hit the radios across all channels, sharp bursts of static followed by what sounded like distorted metallic feedback. Thinking it was a trespasser or a malfunction, the gatekeeper took 2 crew members and headed out to investigate along the south fence line. The moment they reached the clearing, something shifted. The temperature dropped so suddenly that their breath hung thick in the air. The wind died instantly, and even the insects went silent. It was the kind of silence that feels wrong, like the world itself is holding its breath. As they swept the ridge with flashlights, something caught the gatekeeper's eye, an outline standing motionless against the moonlight. At first, it looked like a shadow, or maybe a tall figure wearing a cloak. But then it moved, not walking, not stepping, gliding, drifting sideways across the ground with impossible smoothness, as if its feet never touched the earth at all. One of the camera operators whispered, "What the hell is that?" But the gatekeeper didn't answer. His hand hovered over his sidearm, not drawing it, just bracing, like instinct had taken control. The figure stopped in front of the mesa slope, perfectly still, as if watching them. Then, without warning, it vanished. Not faded away, not ran. It blinked out of existence, like someone had cut it out of reality in a single frame. The 2 men behind him froze, wide-eyed, but the gatekeeper took a step forward, slow, deliberate, like he was being pulled toward the spot where the figure had stood. His training told him to retreat, but something deeper pulled him forward, something he would never be able to explain. He radioed the command base, but the radio erupted with a noise unlike anything they had ever heard, an ear-splitting metallic screeching distortion that made both crew members drop their equipment and cover their ears. It wasn't static. It sounded like twisting steel underwater, a warping, bending shriek that didn't belong in nature. The sound stopped as suddenly as it started. When the channel cleared, the gatekeeper said only 2 words, "Shut it." He ordered the team back immediately, refusing to speak another word on the walk to the command center. The men expected panic, but instead, he was silent, expression frozen, eyes locked on the ridge like he was trying to stare through the darkness. The next morning, he acted as if nothing had happened, but the change was impossible to hide. He barely slept. He rewalked that section of the fence 3 times before sunrise. He avoided questions. He refused to discuss what he saw, not with the crew, not with the scientists, not even off camera. And everyone noticed. He stood alone more often, staring at the mesa with a look no one had seen on him before, not fear but recognition, like he had seen something he knew too well, something he hoped he would never see again. Insiders later revealed that the gatekeeper had experienced things at Skinwalker Ranch long before filming began, but whatever he saw that night was different. It wasn't just an unexplained shape in the dark. It wasn't just a shadow or a light anomaly. That was the moment he realized something on the ranch was aware. Something was watching them, and worse, something had noticed him. That single encounter cracked the armor he had built around himself for years, and what followed over the next weeks would push him past the breaking point. Because the ranch didn't just show itself once, it came back, closer, smarter, and more personal. The first encounter wasn't the end, it was only the beginning. After the Ridge encounter, the Gatekeeper tried to carry on as if nothing had changed. He stuck to his routine, walking the perimeter, monitoring the sensors, checking every camera feed. If anyone asked about that night, he simply shook his head and changed the subject. But even though he looked calm on the surface, the tension in his body told a different story. Something had gotten inside his mind, and it wasn't letting go. The command trailer had always been the one place he trusted completely. Inside those metal walls, surrounded by monitors, radios, and instruments, he felt protected, shielded from whatever roamed the ranch at night. The equipment never glitched there. The temperature never shifted. It was the safe zone, at least it used to be. One night, close to midnight, the Gatekeeper sat alone in the trailer reviewing drone footage. The rest of the crew had gone to bed, leaving him in silence except for the soft hum of electronics. But suddenly, every monitor in front of him froze. Multiple cameras, multiple angles, all captured the exact same frame, something that should have been impossible. Every screen showed one image, a silhouette standing directly behind him inside the trailer, just a few feet away. The figure wasn't tall or monstrous. In some ways, that made it worse. Its proportions were human, but wrong. The arms hung too long, the shoulders were too narrow, the outlines bent subtly, like something was trying to copy the shape of a human body, but didn't understand how to wear it correctly. The Gatekeeper spun around instantly, hand on his weapon. Nothing was there, but the air behind him had changed. It was freezing, heavy and damp, like he had opened the door to a walk-in freezer. A chill spread down his back, the kind that feels like fingers sliding down your spine. Then the monitors flickered again. The silhouette vanished from the screens, only to reappear for a split second, closer, clearer, like it was leaning toward him. And then, one by one, the screens began replaying the last 2 seconds of footage backward, looping again and again with no input from him. He slammed the keys. Nothing. He hit the power button. Nothing. He even yanked out the cables, but the screen stayed on, replaying the reversed footage of that impossible figure standing right where he'd been sitting. A static distortion formed around the silhouette like a shimmering field, lines bending, pixels warping, shapes twisting. The face was the worst part of all. It was blurred and smeared like wet paint wiped across glass, but 2 dark hollows stared out from the center, eyes that were aware, intelligent, watching him. When the monitors finally shut off, the Gatekeeper sat frozen in his chair, shaking, not from the cold, but from something he had never shown before: fear. The next morning, the tech crew checked the systems. They found no corrupted files, no system malfunctions, no record of the frozen footage, no logs showing the reversed playback. There was no evidence anything had ever happened. But the moment they asked him about it, he cut them off and refused to say a word. From that day forward, he never stayed inside the trailer alone again. The lights stayed on longer. The doors were checked twice. Sleep became rare, because whatever had appeared behind him wasn't just a shadow or a glitch. It wasn't something out on the ridge or hiding in the tree line. It was inside the trailer, inside his space, inside the only place he thought he was safe. And worst of all, it hadn't just watched him, it had chosen him. This was the moment his fear stopped being about the ranch. From here on, he wasn't guarding the land. He was guarding himself. And the ranch was just beginning to tighten its grip. After the encounter inside the command trailer, the Gatekeeper tried to convince himself it was just exhaustion, stress, bad lighting, a trick of the mind. He forced himself to return to routine, telling the others nothing had changed, but those who worked alongside him saw it clearly. His eyes didn't scan the horizon the same way anymore. They darted, searching, expecting something to appear from the darkness. His voice, once firm and commanding, carried a quiet tremor he couldn't hide. It was as if the ranch had found a way inside him, planting a fear he couldn't shake loose. Just days later, the incident that would shatter whatever composure he had left unfolded near the old cottonwood tree at the far edge of the property. It was a night like any other. Routine perimeter checks, calm weather, and clear skies. Nothing unusual, nothing threatening, yet the moment the gatekeeper stepped out onto the dirt path, he felt the air shift around him. The atmosphere grew dense, heavy, pressing against his chest like invisible weight. It wasn't temperature this time, it was presence, a raw, suffocating awareness that wrapped around him like a tightening rope. He radioed the command trailer, his voice low and controlled, but different, strained, clipped, and edged with panic he was trying to hide. He whispered that something was pacing him from inside the tree line. Slow footsteps, crunching through brittle leaves, perfectly timed to his movements. Every time he stopped, the footsteps stopped. Every time he continued, they followed. But the thermal cameras showed nothing. The sensors remained silent. Whatever was moving out there wasn't showing up on any device. Then he stopped responding to the radio. The last words he spoke were quiet, barely above a breath. "It's right here." And then silence swallowed the signal. By the time the team reached him, he was standing motionless in front of the towering cottonwood tree, staring upward as if something enormous loomed right above his head. His flashlight hung loosely in his hand. Beams dropped to the dirt like he had forgotten he was holding it. His pupils were blown wide, breath short and shaky. His expression that of a man staring at something beyond anything human vocabulary could describe. He didn't react when they called his name. He didn't blink. It was as if he was gone, awake but not present. It took Thomas physically grabbing his shoulder to snap him back. He gasped sharply, stumbling backward like someone breaking free from a powerful grip. His hands shook uncontrollably. The team asked what he saw, but all he could whisper, over and over, was the same trembling sentence: "You didn't see it. You didn't see what was there," and no matter how many times they pressed, he wouldn't say more. Back at the trailer, they examined the footage from his body cam, hoping for answers. And that was when they discovered something that made the room go cold. At the exact moment, the gatekeeper went silent. A faint clicking sound appeared on the audio track. Soft at first, distant, then gradually becoming louder, sharper, rhythmic. Nothing like any animal or machine anyone had ever heard. It was methodical, intentional. Like communication, beneath the clicking, layered deep inside the noise, came something worse, a distorted voice, warped and broken, speaking through the static in a tone that didn't belong to anything human. The technicians filtered the audio, isolating the sound, and for the first time, words emerged clearly. 2 words, stretched unnaturally, drawn out like something testing the shape of language. "Come back." When they played the audio for the gatekeeper, he didn't listen for more than 2 seconds. He ripped the headphones off, his face drained of color, and walked out of the command trailer without a word. That night, he didn't finish his patrol. He refused to go back into the darkness at all. The man who once patrolled these grounds alone in pitch-black silence wouldn't take another step without someone beside him. The cottonwood tree incident broke something inside him. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was realization. Whatever existed on that ranch wasn't just watching at a distance. It wasn't content to observe from the shadows. It wanted contact. It wanted him. And worst of all, it was learning how to speak. That night was the moment the gatekeeper stopped protecting the ranch and began protecting himself. From that night forward, he carried a different expression, haunted, hollow, like a man waiting for something inevitable to come back for him, and it would, much sooner than anyone expected. The days following the Cottonwood incident were different. The gatekeeper moved through the ranch like a man waiting for impact. He checked the locks twice, then 3 times. He started avoiding entire sections of the property, especially the northern stretch, where the tree line pressed close against the fence. For the first time since he arrived, he wasn't the one leading the team through the dark. His voice, once sharp and commanding over the radio, now carried a quiet tension, as if every word was holding back something much heavier. He tried to bury himself in routine, but it didn't work. Sleep came in fragments, broken by sudden jolts awake, heart racing, eyes searching corners of the room. Even during daylight, he looked over his shoulder like something unseen was following close behind. The others felt it too, not fear of the ranch itself, but fear of what it had chosen to reveal to him. The final breaking point began on a night that seemed calm, uneventful, almost peaceful. The team was gathered inside the command center reviewing footage from the night before. Nothing unusual, no spikes, no movements, nothing out of place. Then, without warning, one of the monitors flickered, just for a second. A glitch, a single frame, nearly too fast to catch, but in that frame, there was something standing behind the gatekeeper on footage from the previous night. A tall, thin silhouette, still and silent, positioned directly behind him as he walked the perimeter. Thomas froze the video and zoomed in, but the image deteriorated instantly, melting into digital grain like it was being erased in real time. The room fell silent. No one knew what to say, and then the gatekeeper walked into the room, unaware of what they had just seen. The moment his eyes landed on the frozen frame, his expression changed. The stiffness in his shoulders, the sharp intake of breath, the way his hand curled unconsciously into a fist. He knew exactly what it was, even if he refused to speak its name. Before anyone could ask a question, the radios crackled to life. At first, it sounded like ordinary static, a faint hiss, but then the noise shifted, shaped itself into something that sounded eerily like a whisper traveling through water. It stretched slowly into a broken, distorted voice, 3 syllables, uneven but unmistakable. It spoke his real name. Brian. The room went still. Almost no one on the ranch ever called him that. To the crew, he was the gatekeeper. To security, he was Dragon. But the voice on the radio knew the name beneath the name, the one he rarely used. His jaw tightened, his eyes fixed on the speaker. Every muscle in his body went rigid. The whisper came again, clearer this time, slow and deliberate, shaped like a taunt. Brian. The gatekeeper's breath caught, and before he could respond, the voice returned one last time, sharper, colder, cutting through the air like a blade. Behind you. He spun so fast that he knocked over the chair beside him. Every camera feed in the command center flickered simultaneously. Screens strobed in and out, and the temperature inside the trailer dropped in seconds, the air turning icy, heavy, and suffocating. When the screens stabilized, the silhouette appeared again, this time not in recorded footage, but live, standing exactly where he had been moments earlier. Motionless, watching. The gatekeeper stared at the screen, his face hollow, stripped of the hardened persona he had built for years. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said the words no one ever expected to hear from him. "I'm done." He didn't yell. He didn't explain. He simply turned, walked out of the command center, and disappeared into the darkness outside. He spent the rest of the night pacing along the dirt road near the main gate, alone, shoulders slumped, staring into the black stretch of trees as if expecting something to emerge. He wasn't guarding the ranch anymore. He was waiting for whatever was coming for him. At sunrise, he sat quietly on the tailgate of his truck, hands hanging between his knees, eyes fixed on the mesa as if it were breathing. When Travis approached, he didn't look up. He spoke without emotion, like a man already mourning something he could never reclaim. "It's not the ranch," he said quietly. "It's me. This place doesn't follow you. It chooses you, and something out there chose me a long time ago." He stood, walked to Brandon Fugel's truck, placed his security badge on the hood, and without another word, he got into his vehicle. As he drove down the long dirt road leading away from the ranch, the road he had spent years protecting, the cameras captured one final image of him through the rear window. His face pale, eyes locked on the land behind him as if afraid to blink. He didn't look back again. A week later, the crew was told he had officially stepped away. No arguments, no negotiations, no disagreements. He walked away because something on that ranch was no longer observing. It was calling him by name, and he refused to stay long enough to hear what it wanted. The gatekeeper wasn't beaten by the unknown. He was hunted by it. And deep down, every person who worked on that ranch understood one terrifying thought. If the ranch chose him, who will it choose next?